Harry Potter plus martial arts equals this book, Dragon Dao by Daniel A. Cohen. Kind of a crazy thing to say, but now that I'm saying it out loud, the concept seems pretty believable. This will be a spoiler-free review, but before I get into it, you guys do need to know something, and it's how I got this book, so I can just be completely transparent when I'm reviewing it. This book is written by a local author here in Austin, Texas, and one day, my dad and I were at a local bookstore, which is now closed down, RIP South Congress Books. I didn't even want to go in, but my dad, who isn't a reader, said that we should, and we did. I just browsed and saw this spine. I thought it looked interesting, so I pulled it out. I thought the cover looked sick, and that was really all I needed to convince me to buy it. I read the back. I thought the synopsis was interesting. I saw the reviews on Goodreads, and they were positive, so I just bought the book. Never did I expect to meet the author. I made a video on TikTok/Instagram about the book, and then a few other videos just including the book in it, not necessarily completely about it. Daniel saw the videos, reached out, and I met him for coffee, although we actually got a matcha latte because coffee hurts my tummy. Literally the next day. I'm saying this to acknowledge that I have met the author, but stumbling upon this book was pure coincidence, and knowing the author will have no effect on this review. Don't get mad at me for that, Daniel. First, let's start off with a quick synopsis so you can decide if it's something you want to read. Mexican-American, freaking W, Luis La Luna, W. At least I think he's Mexican-American. Daniel said he is when he was talking to me, but we also don't know who Luis's parents are yet. So I guess that's some confirmation. But we just have an extreme lack of Hispanic representation when it comes to characters in fantasy. Luis is a young man that was abandoned by his mother and raised by his tia. I don't know if they're actually related or not. I don't think so. They've always kind of financially struggled to get by, but one day when he is like 17ish, his tia starts to lose her mind. He starts mumbling crazy shit, doesn't recognize Luis, even hates him when she is having one of her fits. Eventually his tia's insurance finally kicks in, and Luis no longer has to financially support her stay at a mental health facility by participating in underground fights. Even though this is the case, he finally hits rock bottom after finding a mysterious stone on a beach. When he gets back to his apartment, the stone that he picked up mysteriously transports him to another realm. This realm is a realm of magic, a realm of a plethora of different species, and most importantly, a realm of martial arts. Luis finds himself accidentally passing an entrance ceremony for the most prestigious martial arts school, Dragon Dao. This ceremony determines which clan you belong to, kind of like houses in Harry Potter, and Luis manifests an ability called Blue Fire, which is exactly what it sounds like, and is sent to a clan associated with fire abilities. Here he has to learn to control his once-in-a-generation ability, because if it doesn't, it will ruin him and everybody he cares about. He teams up with a muscular pacifistic dwarf girl and a telepathic death-obsessed half-elf, and along with some instructions from his senseis, he has to work his way through his schooling, master his ability to figure out how to get home, or even if he should get home. With martial arts katas instead of wands to perform spells, if you're a Harry Potter fan, I think you'll enjoy this book. Are you enjoying this video? Don't scroll away. Make sure you check out my wishlist/sponsor links in the description if you want to support me financially. If you want to follow me on any of my socials, they will also be down there in the link tree, or just regular links you can click. Back to the video. I gave this book a 4.3-ish star rating. First, let's talk about the things that I did like, and then we'll talk about the things that I wasn't really the biggest fan of and what knocked it down from that 5-star. To start off, the concept. I didn't know going into it that it was going to be Harry Potter-esque. I just thought it was going to be people kicking ass. So color me pleasantly surprised, even though I haven't read Harry Potter, but you can't live 25 years in America and know nothing about it. I just think the concept is cool. I don't think I've ever read anything martial arts related, but also has European fantastical elements to it. You know, elves, dwarves, etc. A unique blend of fantasies, in my opinion. I expected it to be a little bit more like cultivation, Murim vibes a little bit, but it wasn't, which is good for me because I'm not the biggest fan of that. I always get really confused. Although after I say all this, I realize that the whole clan thing is pretty common in different martial arts / cultivation / Murim type stories. So maybe saying Harry Potter-esque is inaccurate. I don't really know. Somebody can check me on that. I liked the different clans type thing we have going on here. The houses equivalent. Each clan has different things associated with them, you know, like Harry Potter. Whether that be like attitudes / personalities or the way they fight. One of the clans, the Blood Claws, I think they're called, all form their own blades and are mostly like inseparable from their weapons. weapons. What are they, like crimson blades made? They're like soul blades or something that they form from themselves. They are more aggressive and hungry for action, whereas you have a clan like the White Wings, which are more passive and more peaceful diplomats. They are martial artists, but they are very against the ways that clans like the Blood Claws operate. I'll only mention these two clans for now. You all can discover the other ones, including Luis's, as you read. I also really enjoyed the idea of using martial arts katas to perform spells, and these spells do various things. I do have something about it that I would have liked to have seen, but I'll save it for later. But I like the concept of it. I think it's cool, which kind of leads me into the world building and history. How does that lead me into the world building / history? Well, you see, the thing that makes up a martial arts kata is various stances from the alphabet, which in this world is where we derive the term alphabet from. And like I said, the alphabet is a series of stances and positions that you take and combine and reorder to make up various martial arts katas. And then each, stance or whatever has different variations and different things you can add to it and things like that for even more creativity. I really like that. The history is a kind of alternate history type, at least when it comes to the hidden history of our realm, not necessarily the martial arts realm. Well, I guess it's included, right? Because they're both really connected. There wasn't a heck ton of history, but what he did drop was really fascinating, including famous historical figures that were supposedly students at this martial arts school. I also think that the way the realm divided is really interesting. I'll leave that up for you guys to see. I do wish there was a map though, really wish there was a map, but sometimes authors just ain't mappers, I think Robin Hobb was also not a mapper, so can't fault, I guess. Now on to what I liked about the characters. I actually really did like our main character, Luis. He really reminded me a lot of Vis from The Will of the Many, but where Vis was kind of sort of angry and basically perfect at everything, Luis was angry and depressed and bad at everything. Which makes sense because he's not a martial artist, at least not yet. Yes, I know they come from very different backgrounds and trainings, but I think if Vis was a little bit more like Luis, I would have enjoyed The Will of the Many way more. The Will of the Many really relied on its side characters far too much, intentionally or not. This book has a very good mix of lovable characters, main and side. I would definitely say that I was pretty attached to our main character, Luis. When a character has it rough as he does, I actually found myself feeling really emotional and bad for him whenever something went wrong. Like everything, because everything went wrong. If an author can get me to feel this way about anyone, it's an automatic 4-star book. I really felt the anxiety / panic, his emotions in general with him when he was feeling them. And to me, that's a sign that you have succeeded when it comes to your characters. So if y'all want to feel attached to a main character, definitely give this a try. Now, when it comes to the side characters, I once again found myself liking them more than our main character, but I'm actually wondering if maybe I just like the mystery of not knowing a character as intimately as our main character, or having to puzzle out a lot about them rather than just directly experiencing them. Not to say that I didn't like our main character, as you just heard me say, I hope, but I think our side cast is more interesting and more mysterious. But like I said, maybe it's just also that mysterious aspect that I really like. Definitely a personal preference, maybe. I really liked Olivia, the buff dwarf pacifist, Sumi, the telepathic elf, and at least 2 of the senseis. One of the characters, there was another character with a supposed plot romance, and it felt like a little forced, but it's okay. But with regards to Olivia and Sumi, like I said, maybe it's just because I had to work to figure out what their deal is. I actually think the senseis are really interesting. I'm excited to read more about them, especially since a Young, who is the sensei that kind of takes Luis under her wing a little bit, but isn't really able to fully commit to him due to her own issues. Cohen definitely just tells you a little bit about each character, and I think that's unavoidable as an author and sometimes even preferable, but he does leave out a decent amount in order for the reader to do some legwork in order to figure out what the frick is up with these people and, leave room later on down the line for further character development and character exploration. There is 100% found family in this book, and I love that. I love that trope, so I'm totally down for that. Now let's talk about some of the stuff that I struggled with. First, while I liked the idea of using martial arts katas to cast spells, I found them maybe, what's the right way to describe it? I don't know. Is immersion breaking the right way to put it? He does this thing where he just gives the kata a 3-word name, like monkey swings the paw or something like that. I don't know. I just made that up on the spot. And then he sometimes vaguely describes it. Like the way it happened in my head when I read the character doing a kata is that boom, 3-word name, then something happens. I would have preferred to be given some tools necessary to imagine the actual katas. This probably involves some level of choreographing, which I get is a very tall task to be asking from the author and is probably impossible when it comes to every kata used. I don't know the answer for this, and maybe it's not actually an issue, but I'm a man who likes things choreographed. And I felt like in a book that is so centered around martial arts, I kind of wanted to see more actual martial arts being choreographed. But there were a few fight scenes, I think, and then those were well written and easy to follow. I wish there was more. I think there could have been way more action in this book for what it was. I'm hoping to see more later as we go on, but for how often the katas were used, I kind of just wanted to be able to imagine more, I guess. Like I said, I don't know if this can be solved or if it's an issue at all, just my personal preference. But then again, is it worth describing the same kata every time it's used? Probably not. Maybe just once and then you don't have to explain it again. Or like, hear me out, they're all choreographed, and then there's like some sort of glossary in the back that people can refer to with like a human figure, an image of a figure performing the moves. Probably unrealistic, but you know, if you had that in the back, you could maybe describe it. It might make it easier for you to describe it when you're writing if you have the figures to look at, maybe. And then you can just describe it once, and then if somebody needs to be like, oh, what is that? They can go back and look it up in the glossary. But it did take me out of the story a little bit. I really enjoyed anything related to this that was described, like the stances or showing the alphabet. The next issue I had was that sometimes I had trouble figuring out where the plot was going. This book very much felt like a character heavy book, but sometimes it felt a little too much like episodic TV rather than serialized TV. This made it a little slow for me. I wouldn't say too slow because I was decently attached to the characters, and at the end of the day, I care way more about the characters than I do for the plot. But a lot of the time I was like, okay, where are we going with this? Mostly about the external plot. A lot of the climaxes during the episodic parts were more focused on Luis dealing with something, which is fine, but it felt like in the middle of the book, it was almost missing some external driving factor. I don't know, like maybe if our main villain could have been a bigger part of the external driving factor that was causing some things happening in the school, but I guess he kind of was, so maybe that's not it. I don't know. But I do think based on how this book ended, this will probably not be the case for the sequel. I think this honestly might just be an issue with character heavy first books in just different series. Like I had a similar problem with The Blade itself by Joe Abercrombie, and this book has more plot than that in the first one, external plot. Maybe. I will say that the last 100 or so pages definitely had the plot pick up, and I did binge it, although it felt like a little bit out of nowhere, but the ending definitely made me want to pick up the second one when it comes out. The last thing I want to talk about is the world again. While I did enjoy what was shared with us, I do think that Cohen might have missed out big time on showing this world that he created, at least in book 1. I hope there's more in book 2. I think a map would go crazy. Like I said earlier, I want to see way more. I want to dig deep into the various cultures, races, creatures, landscapes of this other realm. I would prefer this to be via interactions with people / monsters, you know, visits to places, politics, rather than being like info dumped about them. I'm not saying he does info dump about these different cultures or whatever all the time, but you know, for future reference, that's kind of how I would personally prefer to be introduced to the world or learn more about the world. I just hope we learn way more in book 2. I'm a huge world building nerd, and that was something I really wanted and wish I got more of. But what he did share was stuff that I did really enjoy. If you're a world building nerd like me, you probably won't be super attached to this entire new realm, but you'll definitely like the small parts that you see. And that's it for the video. I definitely recommend you give this a shot. You can find it on Amazon. Once again, this book is called Dragon Dao by Daniel A. Cohen. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see y'all next time.